Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I'm your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that continues to stay fresh. Today, we are continuing our album for album series. Last week, we talked about my pick for Tony, which was Death Cab for Cutie's album Narrow Stairs. And today, we're tackling Tony's recommendation of the Sly and the Family Stone album Fresh, which was their sixth album, released in 1973. Tony, why did you give me this album?
I gave you this album because it is so good. I don't hear anyone talking about it, and it's fantastic. It is literally, as it's called, fresh. Yeah, I'm confident.
Okay, do you want to tell us maybe when you first heard this album or band or?
Yeah, so the way I discovered Sly and his beautiful music was I was listening to the Chili Peppers. I was learning bass, and it was the second album of theirs from, I think, 1987, Freaky Styley. They actually do a cover of If You Want Me to Stay, which is on this album. What made the cover so appealing to me was, here's the thing. Freaky Styley was produced by George Clinton, an absolute funk master and production master. So that song just sounded really awesome. It hit hard. So then when I went ahead and finally checked out the original because I liked it so much, I was happy with the rest of the album. And it was actually, I actually kind of lied. It was actually from a compilation record that included that song from Freaky Styley. So fortunately, I was looking at the liner notes and was reading the artist, and I was like, there's no one named Sylvester in the Chili Peppers, so I don't know who this guy is. But yeah, that's really my only real relationship with Sly in that way.
You know his other albums?
I do know his other albums. I don't know all of them super well, but like I'm really familiar with Stand and There's a Riot Going On, which that is an album that I think is probably ahead of its time for sure. But to me, Fresh is the one I enjoy the most. Actually, though, my therapist, he used to do live sound work and stuff, and he actually got to do a live show with Sly. And he told me that one time, Sly, after getting significantly high, almost fell off the stage while walking on. And he actually was there to catch his back and keep him standing upright.
Wow. I wonder if that's what got him into doing therapy.
And Sly is coming out with a book. I'm not sure when it's supposed to drop, but I'm excited to read that because I guess there's a lot of very unfortunate stuff that has happened in his life. I think he also kind of fried his brain out, but
which we will get to a little bit on this album.
Oh, I don't actually know what you're referring to, so I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Well, this is the album I know very well, and then doesn't know the drug references on it.
Yeah, well, okay. You know, let's jump right in. I'll explain myself later.
Let me just say that the only Sly and the Family Stone song that I knew before going into this album was If You Want Me to Stay. And of course, again, I knew it because of the Red Hot Chili Peppers cover, which again, I only knew because of you, because you got into their earlier work and just, their whole catalog. And that was it. So that's the only song I knew on this album.
You didn't know Dance to the Music?
No.
You didn't know
Dance
Family
to the
Affair?
You mean their other songs?
Of any of their songs?
I don't think so. I maybe if I listened to them, I would hear them and be familiar, but based off those titles, no.
Okay, so interesting. This is like a very new experience for you.
Yeah. Besides If You Want Me to Stay, and it should be noted that this is considered a funk album. That's one of its main genres, along with deep funk and then progressive soul.
I saw deep funk. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds awesome.
And besides some of the Red Hot Chili Peppers albums that I've listened to, which are kind of a combination between funk and just normal rock. I would say that I don't really listen to funk. So unlike the Death Cab album, where that we just talked about, where like it's mostly type of music you're familiar with, rock, even if it is somewhat alternative or somewhat indie, you kind of know that scene a little bit. Funk, I don't, besides just one-off songs, I have never heard like a full funk album. So that is something that I kind of took into consideration when listening to this album. And I'm going to make a bold claim to start it off with.
I am almost not ready for this. I'm scared. Okay. Get it off your chest.
There is no bad song on this album.
Hell yes. Where's the 3-letter word that starts with the B?
But there, to me, were only a couple standout moments. So let me explain myself.
I'm holding my tongue right now.
The album, it's weird. I don't know many albums like this, at least not off the top of my head. I'm sure if I listened to all my favorite artists, I would think of other albums. It starts and ends fantastically. The middle section, to me, all kind of blends in together. Now, again, there's no bad song, and there's nothing on this album that sounds bad. There's nothing that they're doing wrong. It's all very pleasant. And there's like no song that I would rate lower than like a, probably there's no song I would rate lower than like a B-. But there's like 1, 2, 3. There's like 3 songs that are all consecutively on the track list that are just sound the same to me. And then there's 2 on the second side that also kind of blend in together to me. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, well, let me bring up something really quick. On the last episode, when we talked about the Death Cab album, There Are Stairs, one of your kind of small critiques of the album was the song structures. Maybe the bridge is not being like, different enough, This album, it kind of just has like one groove, and every song just has one groove that it just jams on the whole song. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm surprised you like this album so much, because sometimes I feel like that's something that you don't love. You like sometimes more progressive stuff going on with songs, which is why you like bands like the Beach Boys. But some of these songs just like and again, this production was great. The instrumentation was great. I mean, every like organ or piano on the album, the horns and the bass, the backing vocals, like they're all fantastic. But like, there was not enough change ups for me. And maybe that's just something that you have to, when it comes to funk, this genre, that's just something that's expected. And if that's the case, that's just maybe one reason why funk will not be a top 3 genre for me. Because there was just some times on this album where like I just wanted something a little different after like, I finished a song and I'm like, okay, give me something a little different. And then I feel like I kind of just get the same song again. So that's my bold statement.
I think that is all very fair, actually. I actually don't strongly disagree with anything you said. I think that those are all valid points. In all seriousness, I do think this album has 2 types of songs. I think it has the songs that are just so infectious, you can't not like it. Especially like the inflections and the instrumentation and vocals. But then I think there is a few songs that are a little more, like you said, very one tone. Like, it's got a groove, it's fine, the melody's fine, but there's not as much going on to keep you excited throughout. I do understand that, but I am a little confused where you say it's in the row. There's like 3 in a row. That's the part where I'm like, what 3 are you talking about?
Yeah, so what 3 do you think I'm talking about?
So, okay, so for me, if I had to pick 3 in a row that would blend the most, I would say it would be Let Me Have It All, Frisky, and Thankful and Thoughtful. But I would argue that out of those 3, I know I should let you speak your opinion first. I think Frisky is a standout from those 3.
Those are the exact 3 that I thought were the same. So you're absolutely right. Those are the 3 that again, there's nothing bad with any of the songs, but like specifically on my notes, which I wrote on my last listening of this album yesterday, which was maybe listen like 7 or 8 for me. Like I wrote, Let Me Have It All. I wrote, this is where the album unfortunately starts sounding the same to me. Like the song, like specifically with Let Me Have It All, like the background singers make a return and they sound fantastic. I thought the main vocal hook for like the chorus really sells the song. I thought the kind of slower groove to it had like even more sex appeal than like the first couple songs did.
Right.
And, you know, instrumentally, it all sounded fantastic. But this is where I'm like, okay, the first 2 songs are killer. And when I'll get into them more later, but like this song did less to impress me. Then Frisky, I thought, okay, it starts off with some like electric keys. I thought this is a nice change. This is what I wanted. And then there was even some wah guitar, which I thought was a nice needed change. The bass line was like extra popping, which I thought was great. That also might have been like the widest thing I've ever said on this podcast. And I thought vocally, Sly, I thought he sounded, or when I heard the vocals on Frisky, I thought this sounds like maybe what influenced Doug Pinnick. And I don't know if I'm saying his name right. The lead singer for Tres Mountains.
And King's X.
Yes, which I've not really heard their music, but Tres Mountains I love. Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam, you know, one of his bands. And I heard a lot of some vocal inflections that you were kind of talking about that reminded me of his vocals, at least on that Tres Mountains album. So I thought that was cool. But again, I'm like, I wrote in my notes, nothing bad. It's just kind of more of the same. And then like Thankful and Thoughtful, again, it was just like, okay, now the wah guitar's sticking around. But this time I'm like, it doesn't sound as fresh to me. No pun intended. I'm like, okay, you got more horns, you got more backing vocals, but I'm like, it's just sounding a little too much of the same for me. And then especially with Thankful and Thoughtful, I thought it's too repetitive for an almost 5-minute song. It's like 4:40 or something. I'm like, this is the song where they needed to cut it or they needed to add something new because I'm like, this song is too long for what it's got going on. Again, nothing bad, just too much of the same.
That I totally agree with. I think the 2 most similar songs are Thankful and Thoughtful and Let Me Have It All. And not only is Let Me Have It All, I think, is just better, but it's also a little more condensed for what it offers. But for me, with Frisky, it's the inflections and performance. It's so fun. Like, it's noticeably fun. That, to me, it elevates it to be on the same level as the first 2 tracks, for example. But honestly, if I were to group 3 songs together, it would be Let Me Have It All, Thankful and Thoughtful. And then it would be, I Don't Know, Satisfaction.
Well, I Don't Know, Satisfaction and Keep on Dancing are the other 2 songs that I thought fit with those other 3 that I talked about.
It does fall in that song type, yeah.
So,
but I think Keep on Dancing has a different vibe, though. It's more laid back.
That's the one song on this album I had the least amount of my notes. The only thing I wrote was I looked it up, and I guess Keep on Dancing was like a callback to an older song of theirs called Dance to the Music, which you mentioned earlier. Yes. I also wrote that in the lyrics, there's more references to like drugs. But I said,
okay.
But then I said, it's just the same formula again. And the only thing I said on Keep on Dancing too was, I'm like, at least it's short. Like it's I think one of the shorter ones on the album. But like that song and I Don't Know, Satisfaction, like again, like I Don't Know, Satisfaction, the song. Like obviously it has that kind of like, I think it was them trying to do like a reference to the Stone song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Right. It seems like it.
And it's a song like Let Me Have It All, where I feel like the backing vocals really sell the song. Almost to the point where I almost feel like they're not backing vocals. Like they're just part of the main vocals of like the intro and the verse.
I mean, I would say they are, basically.
But again, it was like, I'm like, it's a good groove, but I'm like, it's just doesn't go anywhere. And then like lyrically, I Don't Know, Satisfaction. I'm like, it sounds like he's singing about like inequality in America at the time, but he doesn't go enough into that subject to really move me as much as it probably should have.
I agree. I agree. Now, I will stand up in general, that as a general statement. I think Sly really does have some great lyrics. Um, like his one of his like classic songs to go to would be "Everyday People," where he's just saying, like we're all different people. That has the famous "different strokes for different folks." And then their song "Stand," which is a title track. That one's really cool too. There's so many great lines. But I do agree. This I don't know is probably I don't know. I would say I don't know and Thankful and Thoughtful are my two least favorites, mostly because of the length and also they're pretty repetitive and the backup vocals can get a little much after a while.
Yeah, and we can talk about now about the other songs that
why don't we
like.
actually switch to a song that I think does talk more about the lyrics are really impactful. What did you think about If It Were Left Up to Me? This song is quite different from the ones we've been talking about. It's most structured like a non-funk song.
Yes, that one is actually one of my favorites. It's probably actually my second favorite on the album. I thought so every time I listen to this album and that song pops up, and it's the penultimate track, I believe, right? Second to last song.
Yes. Yes.
It was always, again, no pun intended, like it was a refreshing moment because you're right. It is not as funk. And that's what I even wrote in my notes. I'm like, this isn't going for like a funk. It kind of sounds like maybe it's more like soul inspired. Like it's a little bit more, it's less funky. The bass is still there, but it's not taking over. It's kind of like the song starts and like everyone's just kind of in on it. There's no like intro where like the bass starts and then the guitar comes in. It just kind of starts, which I like.
It's quite stripped back though. It's just bass, vocals, and drums until
there's no like horns or crazy like wah guitar or anything. And I really like the harmonies on it. And I liked how upbeat and happy it sounded. And again, like the fact that it was just a little less funky, it felt like that's what I needed after. And I will say the song that is before it, Whatever Will Be, also isn't in that same funk style. So those two songs together were nice. I wish that kind of happened more throughout the album. But yeah, I even wrote the song sounds similar. Similar. It sounds simpler. I do think there are horns on If It Were Up to Me, but they're very simple. They're very just background. And I like I said, I think the vocal harmonies are great. And I also noted, I guess it was originally written for their album called Life, but it was left off.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
The only thing that I found like funny with this song, and not funny, like I didn't laugh out loud, but like all my listenings to this album the last couple of weeks, I'm like, what does this song remind me of? Like the second the vocals start, I'm like, this reminds me, like maybe the melody or maybe it's the chord progression reminds me of a song. And I finally figured out what it is. And I don't even know if it's the melody or chord progression. It might just be the vibe.
I'm ready for my mind to be blown. Come on, hit me with it.
It reminds me of Why Can't We Be Friends by War.
My jaw dropped a little bit.
But specifically like
not in the Smash Mouth version.
No.
Okay.
Well, not the Smash Mouth version, but that's the version I'm most familiar with. So
right.
like if you go like listen to Smash Mouth version, like theirs is like a ska like punk version. But like just the melody, the melody and just like the kind of the group vocals, the singing, like it kind of reminds me of Why Can't We Be Friends?
Okay, I can kind of see that because, and I say this definitely with a grain of salt here, they're both feel-good songs. If It Were Left Up to Me isn't like super, this is obviously feel-good, but it makes you feel good.
No, yeah, because they're like saying like, if it were up to me, like the world would live in harmony and, like there would be, like it's a hopeful song for sure lyrically.
I really like the part where it's like, if it were left up to you, would you sigh and forget it? Get some sleep in to see if you would live to regret it.
Yeah, no, like definitely some of the best vocals on the album for sure, or lyrics.
And I think what's really nice too is Sly is actually so what's cool is that they are a family. him and his sister Rose, I think, and
Yeah.
Freddie is the brother, does vocals too and guitar. I should probably know the band layout a little more than I do. So, anyways, though, I think it's really cool how he did like this low key vocal that doesn't overpower. Love the finishing touch on it too. The cha 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 to end the song.
Yeah.
It very fitting.
I wrote,
And
yeah, it reminds me of like when someone is singing happy birthday at like a restaurant and they always end it with
yeah,
cha 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 for some reason, or like a classroom, even though our family ends it with and many more. But some people do the happy
yeah,
birthday
we get
to
kind of
you,
bluesy.
cha cha cha.
Yeah, and then I think this song also demonstrates Sly's ability as a producer. Now, by the way, Sly did play bass on some of these songs. Like I think he
Oh, I
played
didn't
on
know
"If You
that.
Want Me to Stay," which I didn't know that until like I think honestly earlier this year.
Actually, it says he plays
Um,
harmonica on this album. What song has
whoa,
harmonica?
whoa! Hang on a minute.
Okay,
Hold the phone.
I bet you it's on one of the alternative mixes of the songs, which I did not listen to.
Oh yeah, I haven't listened to those very often.
I did
Okay.
actually listen to the alternative version of Babies Making Babies because alternative version to me means it's going to sound completely different as opposed to an alternative mix. And when we get into that, I will mention that. But yeah, the credits list him as playing harmonica, but they don't say what song.
That's pretty funny. Okay.
And actually, he doesn't play bass on If You Want Me to Stay. Someone named Rusty Allen plays bass.
Oh, okay. Rusty Allen's sick though. I know for a while they had Larry Graham, I believe, do the bass work, and
he did it on. He played the bass. Actually, he played it on If It Were Left Up to Me, but he's uncredited, and he plays it on the previous track, Whatever Will Be Will Be.
Oh, okay. I actually did not know that. But that's cool. Yeah, all great musicians. Sly used to be a DJ actually before he had a music career. Well, I guess that is a music career, but you know what I'm saying. And I think his production is actually really great. This album, you know, it's a 73 record, so it's this one's a lot more kind of dry and like it's funky, you know. But I think
it didn't need it. It doesn't have a ton of production. I feel like it doesn't need it because the musicianship is really tight on the album.
right. I remember though reading an interview with Freddie Stone, and he was saying that Sly did a great job at making songs sound huge. And I think If It Were Left Up to Me is a great example. It's very stripped back, but it sounds big when the horns come in. It blooms the mix. And I think his other, you know, albums show like There's a Riot Going On has fantastic production. If you listen to Family Affair, you're like, how did this come out in 71? But yeah, that's enough about that song. It's also one of my favorites. So while we're on the topic of these non-funky songs, what did you think about Que Sera, Sera, whatever will be, which is a cover, by the way.
Yes, and
I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah, when I looked it up, I saw that it was written by a duo, Ray Evans and Jay Livingston, and it was sung by Doris Day in a Hitchcock film.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Called The Man Who Knew Too Much, which I've never seen that film, but I've seen a couple Hitchcock films and they've all been great, so I probably should see it. So yeah, but I didn't know it was a cover on the first couple listens. It really sounds like they could have written the song, even though it is less funky than the rest of the album. On first couple listens, this was like I thought my favorite. Well, maybe not my favorite because the first two are hard to beat, but it wasn't my top favorites, and it still is. But I will say the more I listen to it, I will say that it is because it repeats the chorus a lot, which is not their fault because it is a cover. I do think it could have been a little shorter because I do think it gets a little repetitive. That said, I like again that we're this time around. This is I would say the softest song on the album. Like it starts off and the instrumentation kind of takes a little bit, I feel like, to get going, which I think in this album's case, that's a great thing. And
right, it takes its time, which is nice.
It's slower. I almost like considered it a ballad.
I would say so, yeah.
And you know, again, I can talk about the lyrics, but because it wasn't written by them, I'm not going to. Even though I do like the lyrics a lot. How It starts off like as a conversation between a daughter to her mom, asking, like what is she saying? Like, when will I
Will
be
I be
pretty?
pretty? Will I be
Oh yeah.
rich?
Which of course, because it's sung from a daughter's perspective, the verses are sung by Rose Stone. And I thought having another vocalist on the album sounded nice, Not that, I mean, most of the albums I listen to, for the most part, it's usually just one singer the whole time. But when you get like an REM album where you get like a Mike Mills lead vocal, it's always great. So I do like it when you get a vocalist change up. And yeah, I really enjoy like just kind of how it slowly builds, but yet it's still like the softest moment on the album. I just think as the song goes on, it lost its charm a little bit. If it was just a little shorter, but that's very nitpicky. Like, it's still in my top like 5 on the album.
I totally see what you're saying though. Like for me, I'm fine with the length just because I really enjoy it and I think it fits on the album well in this spot. But I totally see what you're saying. It even for me, sometimes I'm like, oh shit, there's another chorus.
Yeah, I needed to lose a chorus, and then I think it would have been like near perfect.
You know what kind of Trump? But you know what? I don't deal with that problem. You know why? My record, because it's just an old copy from Half Price Books. It always gets stuck near the end of the song, and it's on this vocal ad lib. So every time the part of the song comes on, it's absolutely cursed. So at that point, I usually just put it to the next song because it's almost the very end. So that usually cuts me off probably 30
Wait, did it do
seconds
that
at
even
least.
on your newer player?
It did, yeah.
You definitely need to get a new copy, because that means that like scratch or indentation is like deep enough to where even a good turntable can't fix it. So
Yeah,
I
it's
would
so sad.
recommend, because the more times you play it, it'll the bigger the chances of damaging your needle. But this is not the podcast of vinyl today, so
Believe me, Rico could make a
we'll
whole
move forward.
series here.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I did really enjoy the song. Um, I kind of wish it was maybe more in the middle of the album to break up those kind of 5 songs we talked about. Even though they are broken up, because I do think Skin I'm In is not like those other songs before and after it. I do
Yeah,
think,
so what do you think about Skin I'm In then? Because I will say what I think is notable about this is that it has an intro, and the intro is kind of a feel change from the rest of the song, and the tone is more dramatic sounding than the rest.
yeah, I
It
specifically said that the bass line that starts the song is not so funky, but it has more of an urgency to it.
Oh, okay. I like how you
And
wrote that.
it made me feel like it could have been like just like a slightly more dramatic, like you said, like kind of just rock song, but like with a 70s feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like this moment where the song kind of like breaks open, and everything about the song just felt a little harder to me than the rest of the songs on the album, but in a good way. Not harder as in like harder to get into, but like harsher. Maybe harsher is the word I mean. Like, it's like the lyrics are a little bit deeper. His vocals, I feel like during the times where he's singing, they feel a little grittier. Um, I think the main hook of the song, like the kind of the riff that the horns and bass plays,
Where he's doing
remind
the yells.
yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Chicago a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But yeah, I think his vocals are
Totally
killer on this
valid.
song. Um, and even though there's not as many lyrics on this song as some of the others on the album, again, like this one, I feel like Skin I'm In is what he was trying to do with I don't know, Satisfaction. But this is like the better version of it.
That's
Um,
fair. This was definitely one that I got into early on.
and this one did have to grow on me, because when I first heard this album, or maybe like the second or third listen, where I started finding that some of these songs were blending in too much together. On more my last couple of listens of the album, I did find that this song, Skin I'm In, was one of the ones I liked more, because musically it just seemed to be a little less funky, which I kind of enjoyed. And that's the thing, like most people who love funk, yeah, will love this album for so many reasons, and justifiably so, because like that's what funk is. And someone could say like, well, if you listen to a Pearl Jam album all the way through, like it's just gonna have one sound, and that's true too. But that's just because I like rock is like my probably favorite genre. Where someone who loves heavy metal, yeah, it's all gonna sound the same. Like genres, even progressive music,
They're
progressive
genres for
rock.
a reason.
But yeah, exactly. So, and even though funk might not be my favorite genre, like this is, it would be hard for you to play me another funk album that I enjoyed more than this album for its genre.
For me, this album, and I know this is not a very good argument, but for me, this album just has the it factor. Like it's called fresh. Like, come on, that's awesome. Look at the album cover. He is doing this epic kick in the air, wearing these big heels, wearing all leather with the chest out. Like there's an appeal to it, and I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I just really love this album. It's a comfort album for me. And out of funk albums, it is probably my favorite funk album because I think some of them kind of do lose my attention for the same reasons you're talking about, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure like if this had like hints of like I don't know if this is even a genre, but like progressive funk, where like maybe halfway through the song they go like into double time or whatever, and maybe I'm thinking more of like jazz, but like I was kind of hoping there'd be more moments like this on this album, but I mean like the purpose of these songs were I think the first purpose was to get a groove, and all these songs have a groove, even the ones that I don't love as much. You can't deny that it's not groovy. Like they all groove very hard, which is now maybe the second widest thing I've said on this podcast ever.
And that's a good point. Because like the Chili Peppers, obviously, like people that don't like funk like the Chili Peppers, but I think that's because they structure their songs like a pop or a rock song. Not so much at the beginning, but when you think, Blood Sugar onwards, it's basically just rock songs with funky riffs. And I think that's what makes it so appealing. That's why it has a lot of replay value. Where yeah, a lot of like funk is a lot more kind of like how we're saying like the dance, remixes and stuff. It's just something to dance to. But I definitely think a big thing for me is the delivery, the nuances, the inflections, the energy is just killer on this album. And good little segue point here. I think that's what makes the first two tracks of the album pretty much the best on the album, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with your statement. I would say, I mean, maybe my favorite is If You Want Me to Stay, just because it's the one I'm familiar with, and like the bass line is so catchy. Like, yeah, it's super funky, but it's also there's something to it that's super catchy to it. And like it doesn't even like the Chili Peppers version does I don't even think comes close to the original. Like the original is just so good. It almost makes me question George Clinton's decision or his
really.
Yeah, like I know he's the one that like inspired the Chili Peppers to include on the album, but and their version is good. I haven't listened to it in a little while. I should have listened to it this week, but I just think this album version, the original, is just fantastic on its own. That it didn't need a cover.
It definitely doesn't need one, but I think the Chili Peppers one does offer a pretty cool take on it. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I really love the way like the electric guitar sounds. It's wad out. I will say, in preparation for this album, I actually found, I've never seen them before, but I actually found a few different remixes on Spotify of If You Want Me to Stay, the Chili Peppers version. And oh my god, they're some of the worst alternate mixes I've heard. They absolutely sound like dog shit. But the actual one that made it on the album, I think, is actually really enjoyable to listen to. Like, they would take like in the studio version of the cover, they have like really great guitar licks, but they were like highlighted. You could hear them well in certain sections, and they stood out. But like for the remix, they would just take like a repetitive guitar part and make it loud. And like it just leave it to George. George is the man. So
yeah, I like, and there's not even much I can say about If You Wanted Me to Say, because like it's just like great. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome, even though it is like just kind of the same groove the whole time. Like it's great. Like the horns, which does the Chili Peppers version have horns?
I think so. That album did have horns,
but I just feel like these horns probably sound better.
I would say give it a listen to the Chili Peppers. I mean, I do prefer the Sly for sure, hands down. But it's cool. It's cool.
I like the piano throughout this version of the song. It's just so likable. Like I even if you don't like funk at all, I don't see how someone could dislike the song. And like again, one thing that I don't think like Anthony Kiedis could pull off is like the inflection of Sly's voice when he sings the line, gotta get a message over to you now. Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
he like the way he sings that, like I don't know, it's so good. It almost sounds like it was like a one take thing, which I don't know if that's true, but like just the delivery of it is fantastic that I don't
And
think nasally Anthony Kiedis could pull off.
for me, Sly is hands down one of my favorite singers. Like with "If You Want Me to Stay," every vocal inflection is memorable and fire. Like even the little scatting at the end is so playful yet fitting. Yet with the song, it's kind of haunting almost to say, which I know kind of seems silly, but it's man, nothing but good words for that song.
No, it is great. And really the opening song too is fantastic. And I was kind of conflicted at first because when I was making my notes, all my complaints about like the middle like three songs and then the other two in the second half were like what I praised about the opening track in time. But the difference is like in time sets up like the overall mood and sonic soundscape of the album. I mean, you have like cool percussion that almost has like a metronome sound to me. I don't know if you get that when you listen to that opening like percussion, like the
Boom,
drums.
but don't boom, boom. Yeah, no, it does
Um,
have that sound, and dude, that intro guitar line alone.
well, that's something I wrote. I said that guitar riff. First of all, I feel like more of the songs on this album need a guitar like the guitar in in time because what's being played doesn't sound funky to me. When I say it sounds funky, I don't mean it sounds like funk, like just chicka 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 chicka, like John Frusciante, what he does 90% of the time, the Chili Peppers. It sounds like almost jazz, like where the notes don't sound like they should be going together. Like it sounds funky, as in it almost sounds bad. It almost sounds dissonant to my ears, but yet it doesn't, and it's just unique enough and right enough that I actually really enjoy it. But I feel like they don't do that enough on this album. Yeah, there's some times where they bring in the wah effect, which sounds cool. But I do think this album needed more of the guitar riff, like in the opening song.
Yeah, I agree. Like this song also includes a few different moments, like where there's transitional music. I can't think of the best way to say that, but there is a few moments where the song does something else for a second and then goes back into the main hook. And every time it goes back into that main groove, it hits hard because of that, that little break from it, which I wish we had a break in Thankful and Thoughtful. At least Frisky, I feel like there are breaks when he goes back to that main put a tickle on the Joneses' head. But yeah, In Time is a great opener. I think it's one of my favorite openers for an album. And I did see, I went to Jazz Alley with mom and dad, and we saw Judith Hill perform, which is someone I'm not very familiar with at all. But it was a group of this woman and her parents were there, like performed with her, and they were killer musicians, and they actually covered In Time. And when I heard them start playing it, I'm reacting the way I did right now. I was speechless. I was like, "What?" And they killed it. It was awesome.
No, I mean, I think the thing I like even most about In Time, like, again, it sets the mood of the album. Like the bass line that comes in, like you get killer bass lines like that on pretty much every song on the rest of the album. And then I feel like there's a transition right before when he starts singing, where like the riff gets a little fuzzy, which I liked. But the main thing I liked about the song were the backing vocals, which I said, even though I love Sly's enthusiastic singing, I almost preferred the background vocals because every time they would sing like the phrase "In Time," the title of the song, they did it in a way where it almost sounded like it wasn't in time with the rest of the music. I don't know how to describe it. Like they did it when you expected it, but I don't know. There was like a way they phrased it where like it didn't feel like a hit on the beat or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb because
Well,
I can't really communicate in music theory like you can, but there's something about it that like it was satisfying, but not in a normal backing vocal way that you would expect.
okay, if so, here's how maybe I would say this. So maybe I'm saying, let me know if it is what you're thinking or if not. But there's kind of two things that come to mind as you're explaining this. Is I really like, and this goes back to Sly being a great producer. I'm really digging how they mix it, as far as the stereo field goes, because like you'll have an organ slam on one side and the bass will pop right after in the other. There's this back and forth thing going on, and that applies to the vocals too. So you get all this back and forth motion that it's kind of it makes it super funky. And then so when the vocals come in for that, brief moment, it's not like the vocals are constant like thankful and thoughtful or satisfaction. Um so yeah, I think that really sells it. Especially because it's like they make you wait for them to say in time. And because I mean the song's called In Time, you're just anticipating it. So then when it comes in for that brief little stab on like, the right ear or whatever, like it's pretty cool. It's a little disorienting, but in the best way possible.
That's very true. Um, and then lyrically, I thought this is one of the more interesting songs on the album when it came to lyrics. There's like some great
Agreed.
one-liners, like he sings, "I switch from Coke to Pep, and I'm a connoisseur."
That's
Now,
my favorite one.
and again, that's a reference to drug Coke, but I switched from Coke to Pep is like him singing, "I switched from Coke to Pepsi," which is like the sodas, the soft drinks, but it's like also a metaphor for like drugs too.
Right, right.
Um,
I can see that one there for sure.
and there was just some other like good one-liners, like when he sings, "There's a wreck yard in the mind of a quitter. In time, he's gonna get bitter." I like that line as well.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the best ones. I also like something moving in the brain of a doer in time feel a little newer.
Yeah, that's a good
I
one.
don't even exactly know what that means, but it's sick.
Yeah, like this song, like it almost, I think it set the tone, like it almost set the bar too high, which is why as the album goes on, I was less impressed with some of the middle tracks because I felt like they were not as well played or produced as this song.
I as much as I would love to say the album is banger front to back, I think you're right. I think In Time, especially when you follow it with If You Want Me to Stay, like you think you're about to hear the greatest album ever conceived. And that's almost true. But yeah, so the thing too is I didn't know exactly what slide to give you because I wanted to give you one because it's, you don't listen to funk albums. I don't listen to that many either. But there's no perfect album of his that you would love because a lot of them are like just funk songs. It's just kind of sometimes it's one section repeated a lot. It's about the groove. Um, but the reason I gave you this one in particular is because not only is it one that's dear to me and how I got started with Sly, but I figured you knew If You Want Me to Stay, and like there's mojo to the album. That is the word. There is a mojo here. Um, but I like that it's really stripped back. There's no smoke and mirrors. Like you said, the songs just don't really need production, and I think that really helps showcase the brilliance of Sly. I think Sly is a fantastic songwriter, even outside the funk genre. And maybe not every song here illustrates that, but I'm excited to show you more Sly in the future. This is kind of one where I'm like, do I just show you a few of the songs, outside the podcast, or do I give you a whole nother album of his?
Yeah, well, I mean, and definitely too, when I was looking up this album online, after I had my opinions on it, because I don't ever I try not to let anyone sway me in whether I like something or not. But
Right.
like, Brian huge music producer and musician, he said, it is one of like the best recordings of all time.
Oh
Um,
wow.
Miles Davis was so impressed by the song In Time that he made his band listen to it repeatedly for a full 30 minutes straight. And then, of
That's
course,
awesome.
George Clinton loved it so much that, he convinced the Chili Peppers to, put If You Want Me to Stay, their cover of it, on their own album. So, like,
Was it
it
he
def
that suggested it? Like, I'm
yeah.
not sure if you.
Yeah,
Wow.
he listed Fresh as one of his favorite albums, and he convinced them to cover the song and to put it on their album.
That.
So
Oh,
yeah, so like it, and again, I also too, to before we quite wrap this up, there's one song we haven't really talked about, and that is the last song on the album. I think this album starts and ends
oh yeah.
great, and this is the best like last two songs on an album you've given me in a long time, because I feel like the last couple albums we've talked about that you've given me, I feel like didn't end as strong as they start. But this is the one where I do, because we already talked about how much I liked If It Were Left Up to Me. And we
Right.
just got done talking about how much I love the first two songs, but I love the last song too. Babies Making Babies. First of all, I like that title because it's, even before you listen to the lyrics, you can kind of assume that they're going to sing about how, you know, you might, your parents might have you when they're young. And when they have you, like they're so young that they could be considered babies on their own, like they haven't had as much life experience, and maybe they still kind of see themselves as kids. And it's this kind of idea that one of my favorite singer-songwriters that we've already talked about recently, Jason Isbell, he sings about on his album called Children of Children, which is kind of the
Oh,
same
okay.
song title, like just slightly different. Uh, the slide version is a little bit more like funny, baby making babies, but Jason Isbell sings like lines like, all the years you took from your mother just by being born. You know, he's singing about how like people who, are still young themselves having kids, and how that takes years almost off of their life having to raise these kids. So I already like the song just from the concept of it and the lyrics. But I also just thought it's like a very fun track. It's like a great way to end the album. I thought the bass line and the horns shined on this song more than some of the others. It kind of reminded me of In Time, where I just felt like the playing was even better on this song than those middle tracks. And even though like near the end it gets a little repetitive, it's a shorter song, and I think it was a fitting way to end the album. And then, because I did see on Spotify that they had the alternative version, I listened to that, and that sounded super different. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it sounds different. It's like, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit more slower, and it's definitely got a different groove, and it has a guitar riff that is more similar to the guitar riff
No,
of
it's
In Time.
faster. It's faster.
Oh, it's faster. You're right. The alternative version is faster, but
It's a little snappier, but it's
yeah.
not as. I think the laid back groove works way better for that song. But interesting enough, though, both of those. So okay, I will admit I kind of slept on the song at first, and I think it was because when I first heard it, the title kind of scared me. Like, because you finish the album, and I think I was so blown away from If It Were Left Up to Me. Then you get back to a song where he's just singing babies making babies. But when over time, it didn't take too long. I realized, wait, this is just like a little brother to In Time. It's got the same whole like kind of
That's what I was
stereo
saying,
field
yeah.
thing going on. Yeah, exactly.
The
Like
good
you said.
bookmark, beginning and ending of the album.
Right. And it is short, which is
But that
a plus.
alternative version has some great guitar that reminded me of In Time that I wish more of the rest of the album had. So I will say, I don't know if I like the alternative version more, but I will say it's more interesting, and I wish they would have kept that guitar part. But yeah, overall, I enjoy the album. Again, like there was no bad moment. There was no, at most, it just felt a little some of the same, like in the middle. But like that's still really hard for me to enjoy an album. Like there are other albums you gave me that I like maybe more because they have more high moments, but they have lower low points, like on the STP album or like the Incubus album. Like there's no bad song on here, and I will say this, if we include it in our new segment, which we haven't really named yet, but our vinyl to not vinyl, I would definitely get this on vinyl for two reasons. One, it adds a different genre and variety to my collection that is always growing. But two, I think this is like the perfect album you put on when like, not that I ever have or go to parties, but this would be like the perfect album to put on at a party where most of the songs are upbeat. They're danceable, like you mentioned, but they're just like they're not easygoing, but like and I'm not saying like they're good background music because they're like, it's not like that, but it's like it's good music to have in the background when you want a more upbeat energy to like a particular event you're having or whatnot. Like this is good music to put on like your Friday or something. Like it's just very joyful.
Or
And
Sunday morning making breakfast.
Yeah, or that
That
too. I don't know. Did
that's
you
a real
listen?
life experience. That's why I suggested that.
Okay, you're making
Good
like
one for there.
pancakes one day and you're listening to this.
Exactly. That's a good one for that. But I see what you're saying though, and I think it's kind of goes back to what you were saying. I think it was about if you want me to stay in particular. Like you hear that, and how can you not like it? Like you can't deny, like, oh, this is a good song, whether you like funk or not. Like, I think that's kind of once again the appeal. It's such an infectious album.
Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it, even if like I wouldn't put it in my top, 20, 30 albums all the time. But like I liked it that it was a different genre for me, and um, and I definitely wouldn't mind, down the road you giving me one of his other albums, especially one that you said sounds sonically different. I would be very curious to see how he writes a song that isn't in this exact same style.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some digging around, and there's also some other Sly albums that I don't know as well for sure. Like I don't know the debut one as well. There is, I think part to my understanding, which isn't much. I think like they literally have an album called like Sly's Back on the Right Track or something like that. So I think he like has tried to make some returns, and I'm not sure how successful those
Well,
returns to making records was
yeah,
or
because
is.
I did read like this was like their last successful album. Like after this, they did release like it looks like one, two, three, four more albums as a band.
Four
But
more, okay. Wow.
yeah, but then like I did read like his drug problems became such a issue that he had to kind of retire from music. Um, so um, I do feel like this album that's part of his legacy too. Like this was like their last really successful album with like a single. But yeah, I'd definitely be interested in hearing more.
He got his nickname because his name's actually Sylvester Stewart, but I believe he got his nickname because of, like I guess in school someone accidentally swapped the L with the Y, so instead of Syl, it was Slyvester, and then I guess they started calling him Sly. Very random, but I thought we should end it on a little happier note.
But he got his name because someone was probably dyslexic.
Right.
Also, I never understand
What a
why did
great
they
story.
make a word about like the meaning of like being dyslexic. Like they make it such a hard word to pronounce. You see what I'm saying? And to like
That is
spell.
true.
Like, come on, what were they thinking?
Like, cause even when you spell it right, it still looks all whack.
Yeah. Like I'm like it's like one of those things where I'm like, someone probably has like a phobia of like long words, and I bet you the phobia for that is spelled. It's like a really long word.
Right. Yeah, pretty soon it's gonna be like, I have a phobia of phobias. What do
Yeah.
you call that?
Yeah. Okay, but now we're just talking gibberish. But yeah, I great album. Thank you for the suggestion.
Glad
That's
you
gonna
liked it.
that's gonna wrap it up for this month's album for album series. We will be back next week with another episode. We're still working on a couple ideas, so not gonna spoil too much yet, but we have some fun ideas in the work. And then I believe next month, kind of is going to be the 1 year anniversary of this podcast. I don't think the first episode got released till
Exciting.
November, but we kind of recorded it and created it, I believe, last October. So last year. So we will definitely have some fun events next month for sure. So, but until then, we hope everyone takes care and you will be hearing from us soon. Bye bye.